everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Want to remind everybody, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And there's a PayPal link down there in the details section for anybody who wants to share some love. And the StreamYard link is there for anybody that wants to join the panel. Tonight I've got some basic information we're going to skim over real quick. Like I said, as it relates to charitable remainder trusts. And we've got John with us tonight. How you doing tonight, John?
What's up, bud? How you doing?
Slow but sure, slow but sure.
Looking good.
Awesome, awesome. And so let's get into it. This is just basic information that we should start learning. And again, like I've said many times, don't believe me, don't believe your neighbor, don't believe the government. For crying out loud, don't believe your mother. Do your research so you know. And this is why I show all my sources. Now, again, we're looking at the United States Postal Service. Audit reports. Remember, we went over postal audits. It says management of business master trust accounts. Remember, I did that series on reconciling with the master trust accounts, where that's an account in a Postal One online master trust account that's tied directly to the general ledger. This is what I'm talking about with the transfer of title incidental to, or expenses incidental to transfer of title, so that we can match it up with the general ledger by putting it in the proper hands, which is the Postal Service. And then we just fund them. How do we fund them? Donations. Remember I spoke about equitable donations the other day? What is the capital of the Postal Service but equity? If you want equity, you must first come with equity. So, let's get into it, see what this is all about. And I'll drop that link down there for everybody.
So
and there's for everybody watching.
Gotta get it out of the hands of the state, right?
Right. Like I've been saying, we're going to take it out of the hands of the state, because that's the master file. This is the master trust account. That master file with the IRS and Social Security number, that's just a file within the public trust that's being administrated. We've got to remove it from the administrated hands and put it in the judicial hands, the judicial determination. So, let's get into it. With, again, the Postal Service. Notice it's the registered mark. And we're looking over here at 5 U.S.P.S. Supplying Practices, Process Step 5, Measure and Manage Supply. Remember, it's all about, remember I told you it's all about supply and demand. And they're the ones that are going to manage the supply. Supply of what? Well, everything that's imported and exported. They're the managers. They're the registered agents. Okay? The shipping agents from the naval sites out on the seas, in the airs, and on lands. What was the next one? Evaluate contract effectiveness, clauses, and provisions. This one here is 5-5.9. So we go here 5-5.9 and we find donate. So this is a nice little chart to show you everything you need to look up. And I'll drop that one. And remember, folks, what they're supplying are postal products and services. Okay. And it says, donate. If the Postal Service has determined that goods have no residual value, and if their disposal This is a disposition. It doesn't mean throwing it away, destroying it, but it's disposition. And remember a while back when I was talking about how we get something like that registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission for a private placement rather than an initial public offering, which is a public sale? Remember this. It's a disposal. It's a disposition. Doesn't mean to throw it away or destroy it. Is unlikely to produce any revenue because it's going to be used for its benefits only, not for investments or imports and exports, just for its beneficial use and or possession and use by the beneficiary at the end of the mile, the last or end of the line, last mile, final destination, the one who is supposed to receive the benefit. The Postal Service may authorize the donation of assets to another organization. So, under the Enterprise Payment System, I have an account, and it is the Keith Orland Little FBU Estate Trust account.
Under the social number.
Correct. Now, the online Postal One account for the Master Trust account, I will establish when we get that new number, that CAF number for that centralized authorization file that says I now control it. The beneficiary is deemed to be the true owner, grantor, and now I can take that estate and grant it to another organization under the Postal One Business Master Trust as a Keith Orland Little estate. One's the estate trust, one's the Keith Orland Little estate. Keith Orland Little FBU Estate Trust, Keith Orland Little Estate. Or I could even put the FBU on there. It's more of a doing business as name. Such donations should be to nonprofit organizations, state agencies, or public bodies, and not to individuals. So the donation should be to a nonprofit organization, or we'll find out later, a private foundation. And I've spoken on this before as I drew up my PMA under a private foundation. You go to my website and you'll see that. It's 26 U.S. Code 509, where they give you the definition of private foundation. Organizations can include schools. So your private foundation can be an educational center that does nothing but charity work and volunteer work. So you encompass all three of them. Include schools, charities, and volunteer organizations. Donations must be approved by the life cycle management team. This goes to the necessities of life and the payable on death, because they're not supposed to technically be allowed to take anything from your estate while you have a necessity of life. Everything is technically upon the right to defer a payment payable on death. And everything is supposed to come from the estate anyway. This is why they have probate courts. And it must be confirmed by the market analyst that the assets have no significant market value. The only value they have is for the donations to a charitable remainder trust, where you get to use the benefits during your lifetime, and then when you pass on as a testator, your will passes all of your assets on to another charitable trust. The remainder is going to a charitable trust. Who is the charitable trust? One of your children in the same situation. They too have a charitable trust. It's a family protection. You teach one, or each one teach one. The same thing of give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Generational. No significant market value, not for sale, for indemnification and redemption. Anything on that, John?
No, no, not on that one. But you want to tell the Master Trust group that you're an ally.
Correct. And that's what the Article 38 of the Lieber Code, as it goes to private property. The commanding officer shall cause receipt to be issued. The spoliated owner may spoliated owner may obtain indemnity, and that's what the birth certificate is. It was issued by a commanding officer, the governor, commander in chief, and his registrar. Both of them signed it, counter signatures with both seals. Now it gets authenticated, both state and federal, and then it gets surrendered to the federal for that redemption purpose to the Treasury. And of course, the post office. Expenses incidental. So the next one I got, now this is part 10. Same thing that we saw before, but this is part 10, contract clauses. And then here, it's got definitions. And then all the other stuff. And you can see it's a long page. A lot of information. I'm going straight to the definitions. We find a lot of our answers in the definitions, and the definitions are almost always one of the first things. Okay? So we go down here through this index. And at the bottom of the index starts the definitions. Clause B1, definitions. This is March 2006, the institution of the Electronic Records Act. And it says, as used in this contract, the following terms have the following meanings. Contract officer, the person executing this contract on behalf of the Postal Service, and any other officer or employee who is a properly designated contracting officer. Remember, we talked about that person reasonably believed to be an eligible contracting participant. The term includes, as it relates to commodities and securities exchanges and the execution of documents, official documents or otherwise, by signing them, laying presumptions in a legal fiction. The term includes, except as otherwise provided in the contract, the authorized representative of a contracting officer. One is signing on for the one named in. The authorized representative giving an unambiguous authorized signature on the instrument is therefore not responsible for the person named in the instrument. So person, contracting officer, the person executing this contract on behalf of the Postal Service. So the person is the contracting officer. The authorized representative is the living soul. The person is always going to be fiction. The contract officer is a contract officer. He is in an office you cannot hold. It's fiction. Understand the language, folks. Acting within the limits of the authority conferred upon that person. Acting. See, it's a big performance. Subcontracts, except as otherwise provided in the contract, which is this contract, The term includes purchase orders under this contract. Remember what purchase order is. The purchase order means somebody is buying something from you. Remember that, John?
Well, yeah. This goes back to the birth certificate, which is a purchase agreement.
Yep. And what did they purchase from me?
Data.
Yep, data elements. So let me get that link for everybody. And like I said, this is a lengthy document here, but that's the element that is the contract officer. And like I've spoke before, with in relations to the Commodities and Securities Exchange Act, you look in there and they'll talk about that person reasonably believed to be an eligible contract participant. And so there's the next link for everybody watching. Now the next one, remember we told you the structure of that charitable remainder gift is that once the testator passes away and has used his estate, the remainder of his estate is then donated to a charitable organization, which is named under one of his beneficiaries. And you do that through your living will and teaching your beneficiaries how to fish, as we say. Publicly traded securities, donating appreciated non-cash assets. What is something that doesn't have any marketable value? If it's a non-cash asset that can then be marketed. Schwab Charitable, 25 years of giving. You see how they make their money? Exactly what they're doing, folks. Everything's volunteer. Does that make sense, John?
Well, just clarify that I'm not buying and selling either. Another wrong assumption on their end.
Exactly. And that's why we have to understand and distinguish these terms and stuff they're using. When they use that term purchase order, that folks specifically, we've gone over this before, and you can look it up on, I believe it was Investopedia, one of a good source for this stuff. That's what they use in the investment world. And as an investment tool, a purchase order, when you get a purchase order from a dealership, what they're doing, that purchase order literally says they are buying something from you. So what are you selling? Quid pro quo, it also means in that same transaction, you're buying something, and therefore you have to buy something they're selling. When you understand the duality of those exchanges and what the credits, how the credit transaction is happening behind the scene while you're dealing with cash items. You're not supposed to be dealing with those cash items. You're supposed to be giving directives from a trust to have them deal with their cash or their cash under your directive as the beneficiary being the true owner and the true creditor. Without us, that fiction gets no credence. We're not here to contract. So let's look at the next one. Oops, forgot to switch that. This is Schwab Charitable. A tax-smart approach to maximize your philanthropic impact. So I want to talk here about philanthropic versus charity. Okay, philanthropic is more of a ends to the means. In other words, they look for a specific effect, and that's that deferment part where they set things aside to accrue and gain interest in inflation and value, and in hopes of getting people bought into that market of that progressive growth in that. And that's an end effect. Whereas charity is something that happens now when you feed a man a fish. Philanthropically, you take the time to teach the man to fish, so the end effect is his cup welleth over. Not that you get a return on your own. See, and that's what the philanthropic does. It guarantees a return on your own, and then if there's anything welling over. So it's actually being used as an investment, not possession and use. Publicly traded securities held for more than 1 year, such as stocks, bonds, exchange-traded funds. Exchange-traded funds, that's a term that you'll find in cryptocurrency. Electronic exchanges. Electronic or exchange-traded funds. They both follow the same things. Same acronym. And mutual funds. These are at the municipal level. They consider them mutual funds at the state and local government securities levels, state blue sky securities, because the resident is a mutual employee under the principal, the mayor, as a resident. Are the non-cash assets most frequently donated to charities? Why is this? It's probably because these assets are widely owned by donors and easily transferred to charities. What's more, donating these assets can unlock additional funds for charity in 2 ways. Now, before we go any further, I want to explain to you King James Version, and this relates to give unto Caesar as belongs to Caesar, and give unto the Father what belongs to the Father. This is Revelation 18, verses 6 through 8. Reward her even as she rewarded you double. And double unto her double according to her works, in the cup which she hath filled to her double. So it's her cup. It's the nationality is their cup. They made it. Okay? How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously. This is the record that shows that they've taken from that estate by everything they've charged you through your life that they weren't supposed to. All those taxes, duties, imposts, and excises that we said are discussed in the drawback. You're not required to pay those, even though it was presumed. So much torment and sorrow give her, for she saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in 1 day. Death and mourning and famine shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. This is talking about that desolate child and the barren mothers. Your charity is your most inherent way of protecting the mother and child for those deadbeat dads and a false patriarchal system that supports that and helps divide those families and create more or less deadbeat dads that are brought up in a system built to feed off of deadbeat dads. It's literally a shame. Title 4D. So let's get back to it. First, you potentially eliminate capital gains taxes because you're now saying you're not going to use it to make a gain on the asset and increase its value. You're going to use it in a consumption way so that the value would only keep its value inherently through your social connection or something like that, where it would only be a singular valued item rather than a marketable value. Like the old farm truck that you get from Grandpa. You cherish those things without a value, sentimental value. You would incur if you sold the assets yourself and donated the proceeds. So again, a marketable value that you would sell it to somebody else first. That's where you would get your marketable value, is through a sale and not through a donation, which may increase the amount available for the charity by up to 20%. So the marketable value you could change so that you could use it for investment purposes by growing the assets for further investments in property that might be better, may or may not. Still a chance, still a risk. So it still goes better to, in my eyes, the consumption and recycling to other things by being fundamentally thrifty and diverse, imaginative. Second, you may claim a fair market value charitable deduction for the tax year in which the gift is made, and may choose to pass on that savings in the form of more giving. Donor advised funds, which are 501c3 public charities. See, those are public charities. What's the difference between public charity and private foundation? Well, the difference is you can still donate to either one, and nobody has a say in it. This one here, the public charities, the only say in it really is because there's a cash item involved somewhere. That's that marketable value when you sell things through purchase agreements. Like John said earlier, who says it has to be a purchase agreement? Why can't I donate to him and he turns around and donates to me? We're both charitable, right? Provide an excellent gifting option for donations of publicly traded securities. Again, this is where I'm talking about it's not publicly traded. It's a matter of keeping it out of the hands of people that would do that and make sure it remains in private placement. Otherwise, it becomes public, and you fail your own privacy. You fail. You obliterate the private trust. Education is the primary thing. Charity and donations, volunteering. That's your public service in the eyes of the Lord. Using the Lord's money, sharing your talents, teaching people how to fish. As the funds typically have the resources and expertise for evaluating, receiving, processing, and liquidating the assets. Liquidating means that evaluation system for a marketable value. So we have contribute appreciated securities held over 1 year. That's what I was talking about earlier, where they defer the debt for inflationary and interest gains, capital gains. Potentially eliminate capital gains tax on appreciation. Claim current year fair market value income tax deduction. So they're claiming it's an income tax, again, because it's a publicly traded security. It's an investment. Okay? In the fiat money, fiat cash items. Investment accounts for its appreciation and not for its possession and use in consumption and depreciation until you might possibly be able to recycle or whatever, like I said. Invest account assets for tax-free potential growth, and that's potential growth. So again, you're talking about an investment for some kind of gain, where again, if your intent is for consumption and its eventual use to its potential, that means using it up. You're not intending for an appreciation, unless it be sentimental value, where you wouldn't use it but just possess it and keep it in its best shape possible in storage or something. We've seen that too. Then its marketable value might go up later in years. Now, I don't call that a deferment of debt, though. Recommend grants from your account immediately or over time. This is like Johnny's college fund. Within your trust, you have a grant that people can donate to for Johnny's college fund. And you can set your own grant up so that potentially there are certain payments made every so often, quarterly, annually, biannually, monthly, biweekly, or bi-monthly and weekly, however you want, just like any kind of paycheck system. CDI. You're potentially just paying someone to take care of the account. Who is that someone? Yourself, with the power of attorney. You're running both the trust and the estate. Postal One, Business Master Trust, the Enterprise Payment System account with the Postal Service as well. One of them's got the proper mailing manuals and everything, firm book and manual dispatch book for private and public details, whether it's being entered into the mails or just passing through the mails. But let's get back to the trust. Charitable Remainder Trust. Case study: making a larger gift will increase tax savings. To illustrate the benefits of donating appreciated securities, consider Jane, who purchased 1,000 shares of publicly traded stock XYZ 5 years ago at $5 a share. This gives her a cost basis of $5,000 in stock. Jane plans to sell her entire position in XYZ and donate the net cash proceeds to a donor-advised fund or other public charity as shown in option 1. Assuming a 15% federal capital gains tax rate based on Jane's income level, if Jane sold the stock, she would realize appreciation of $45,000 and owe an estimated $6,750 in federal capital gains taxes. After paying of federal capital gains taxes, Jane's estimated net cash available for charitable giving is $43,250. Now let's review Jane's benefits from gifting her stock directly to a donor-advised fund or other public charity, as in option 2. In this scenario, Jane may be able to eliminate capital gains taxes to $6,750, the whole thing, while potentially claiming a current year income tax deduction for fair market value of her stock at $50,000. Assuming she itemizes her deductions. XYZ stock has risen in value to $50 per share. So the total fair market value of her holding is $50,000. Option 1, option 2. Donate before selling. In order to maximize the potential tax benefits described above, generally you should transfer your appreciated securities held for more than 1 year directly to a donor-advised fund or other public charity and should not sell the securities first. Sounds like that private placement again, doesn't it? Where you can put a value and then privately fund a public program without selling anything. It's the extension of a credit, deferment of a debt. Giving that program, that charitable program, an opportunity to do the same thing through an investment and create more or appreciate their assets. Thing is, do you appreciate it greater percentage-wise according to that tax base, or can you eliminate those tax bases by donating? That's the principle here. You just eliminate them. In order to maximize the potential tax benefits described above, generally you should transfer your appreciated securities held for more than 1 year directly to a donor-advised fund. And that's what we're doing with all the correction of the records and pulling everything back through a drawback. We're pulling all that stuff back so that everything that we get now can be directly donated. From that United States business to the new private estate trust fund. Restricted stock rules may apply. I doubt it if you're only dealing 1 or 2, 3 to get through this process. I'm not saying that it's only 3 or that you even need 3, but that's the way I'm looking at it. There are unique considerations for gifts of restricted stock that you will want to consider. For example, if your stock is restricted by legend or is control stock owned by an affiliate of the issuer, you are an officer, director, or 10% shareholder, then your company's general counsel must give you permission to transfer the stock to charity. Okay, again, we don't have a company. And it's a matter of correction of the record. Equity equity takes jurisdiction to avoid a multiplicity of suits, and therefore it carries out in equity, a court of equity and not a court at law. However, there are stipulations that need to be declared or confirmed or whatever as it goes to a court of law for equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. So there may be a couple contracts that you might want to address or redress as to your position as third-party benefactor, so that they're understood to be under a trust. As a general rule, restricted stock must be sold in accordance with Rule 144, resale restrictions. Contributions of long-term held restricted stock to a public charity, including a donor-advised fund, may be deductible at fair market value as of the date of contribution, but valuation discounts may apply if restrictions are not lifted prior to gifting. Okay, here we're talking about those public charities and not private foundations. Again, we'll read that sooner or later. I believe it's in one of the next 2. A qualified appraisal may be required to substantiate the fair market value. So what is the fair market value of correcting the record? Again, that should be a value that should be clarified through the correction of those records, and the expenses being incidental to transfer that title up the chain so that the judicial determination is found in that record. Again, that drawing back everything I've already paid into the system that I should not have, was not qualified.
And we should know too, Keith, that securities of charitable organizations are exempt from being registered with the SEC.
Correct, but they can be certified. Greetings, Jesse. How you doing tonight, brother? Sorry you were back there a while.
You're good. I was just absorbing what you were talking about. But something that you said when I got on earlier about making bids and things of that nature with the postmaster. Well, I got on the Secretary of State's website last night and I created an account for myself, and you can do the same thing there. And the most strangest thing happened.
What? Well, before we go any further, what kind of account?
Just a general account with the Secretary of State where I log in, and you can do searches for files, records. You can make bids. You can do trace, registrate things that you've registered, things of that nature.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out and do something on that. Maybe we'll get together and do a stream on that.
It was pretty interesting. I didn't really quite understand what to do with it, but I understood the basis of what it was saying to me. And then to hear you say that, you know, it's basically mirroring kind of what you can do at the post office, also right there at the Secretary of State too. So that was pretty interesting.
Well, yeah, we have to understand all of these are merely accountings of events. In that they lay everything is on commercial paper, therefore it's got some kind of marketable value as a official document that can be securitized or entitled. And so we have this overlay of a banking system for every record there is. It's got some kind of a value. And so it's like knowing where those accounts are, like you said with the CAF number, the centralized authorization file number, where you have, when you get one of those in the power of attorney, that changes that control mechanism over that taxpayer identification and all that. And now you can go in with that power of attorney and get those accounts and do further research on how they interwork with each other. And like I said, it's that state's Bureau of Vital Statistics jurisdiction that then puts it out into a system that just goes to so many different branches. There's well over 500 of them throughout the United States that can reach in their data system and pull up this information.
Oh
Fortune
yeah.
500.
Well, you know, Floyd was showing me something that a friend of his has the capacity to do, and it was a comprehensive breakdown of this guy. They knew when he wipes his butt, okay, and goes to the store to buy the toilet paper. I mean, I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
wow, it was
yeah, that's
crazy.
that that's that LexisNexis reports and shit.
No, no, this is something that only certain types of people can get access to. That's more of a credit report. This was more of a breakdown of, you know, everything in your life.
Wow.
Okay, I mean they every place you ever lived, everything. But I mean, I guess you could say it's pretty much the same thing. But there's levels to it. You know what I'm saying? Depending on your security clearance or whatever the license is that you have in order to access that certain information.
Yep.
Private investigators, you know, people who do banking, things of that nature, right? The law.
Yep. Everything's the way I look at it, and this goes to my analytical and logical program mind. Everything's like a computer program. It's got a set of inputs, and then it's an if then go to programming. So as we go on, it says annual limits apply to charitable deductions. Now remember, this is for the publicly traded shit. We're gonna have to mute you, brother. This goes to the publicly traded stuff. So when you're donating everything, there are no taxes except upon the probate transfer. That's the estate taxes on probate transfers, and those are pretty minimal, I believe. And again, you could do drawback claims on those under the drawback. Again, it's a matter of teaching people how to do this stuff and learn that process. Everything's a drawback. If you're not responsible for it, you're not liable for it, you're not obligated for it, and it truly is a trust, and you're truly one of the benefactors. Again, you have a republic if you can keep it, and the problem with that is the beneficiaries of a republic don't know the law. So if they really don't know the law, can they have the law? I mean, can you give the man a law for a day, or do you have to teach him the law? So let's look at the next one. And this is the United States CFR Title 39, CFR 777.51, acceptance of donations. Again, remember, the capital shall consist of the equity for the United States Postal Service. If you want equity, you must first come with equity. So give them a donation. Romans 6. what was it? Romans, excuse me, Revelation 18. Revelation 18, verse 6. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works, in the cup which she hath filled to her double. Now, what I want to explain to everybody here is that Social Security and everything it receives in a general deposit, in other words, those Social Security taxes and the FICA and everything that goes to Social Security first, and then they place all that in a general deposit. See, that wasn't deposited in your name. That was all pooled and made into a general deposit, and that general deposit was ledgered as their deposit into a fund. The federal government matched that funding as claimed by the state. Those are the abandoned funds because you weren't supposed to. You volunteered them. That's literally how this happens. And those are all due and owing back to you. So it goes on, it says, nothing in these regulations shall prevent a person from making a gift or donation of real property. That's that birth certificate. That's known as real property, or any part thereof, collateral proving real property, or interest therein, the name. And that means I'm the only one that can perfect it. And as Jesse and I were speaking of earlier today, or was it yesterday, I think, earlier today, yesterday, the interest can only be claimed by you because of your name. The interest is always being stored up and passed on. That's what's building in these accounts. Or of any compensation paid therefor to the Postal Service. Judicial Officer Department is a neutral and independent form within the United States Postal Service. You're giving them a donation for their judicial determination of a qualified bond, authenticated and in title form, therefore a document of title. Now it goes on and speaks down here at the bottom. What are the Postal Service's general responsibilities under the order? The Postal Service provides opportunities for consultation by elected officials of those state and local governments that would be directly affected by the Postal Service's facility project actions. That's every address in the city that the mayor, that's the local government, is the principal of. Claiming that you're a resident, a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent. You give them all the information through that change of address form in the SS5 and all the applications you fill out by using that address in that format. And it lays that presumption. These are all to
Just
confuse and distract and multiply the different inputs. It's just a spider web of programming of inputs that aren't necessary. So let's look at this purpose. Go ahead, John.
it just validates what we did at the BC process. The S5 just puts more weight on it.
Right. It makes a latch. Age and majority. The regulations in this part implement Executive Order 12372. Intergovernmental Review of Federal Programs. Issued July 14, 1982 and amended on April 8, 1983. These regulations also implement applicable provisions of Section 401 of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Act of 1968, which the Postal Service follows as a matter of policy. That's your identification with that address on it, folks. These regulations are intended to foster an intergovernmental partnership and strengthen federalism, not Republican form of government, but federalism, by relying on state processes and on state area-wide, regional, and local coordination for review of proposed direct federal development projects. These regulations are not intended to create any right or benefit enforceable at law by a party against the Postal Service or its officers. Not going to do that. I'm doing it against the record. These regulations implement Executive Order 12372 and are adopted under the Postal Reorganization Act rather than the statute and executive order listed in paragraph A of this section, to the extent the statute and executive order do not apply to the Postal Service. Postal Service is extra-governmental. Did you guys understand that the Postal Service is the one that publishes the Federal Register?
I didn't know that.
Where is it? I'll find it sometime. I thought it was on this page here, but I'll find it sometime. Oh, right there. What categories of facility project actions of the Postal Service are subject to these regulations? The Postal Service publishes in the Federal Register a list of its categories of facility project actions that are subject to these regulations. Now that there says the Postal Service publishes in the Federal Register, but it's actually, and I'll have to find again the wording here, it's the Postal Service that actually regulates the Federal Register. Remember, it's an accounting system, and they regulate all of the accounts. So let's go on to Investopedia and Charitable Remainder Trust. And I'm just going to skim through these two because it's a Charitable Remainder Trust and a Charitable Remainder Unitrust. So we have Charitable Remainder Trust. How it works. Oops. I hate this. And types. A charitable remainder trust is a split interest giving vehicle that enables people to pursue philanthropic goals while still generating income. Tax exempt and irrevocable, they are designed to reduce the taxable income of individuals. Okay, so what we have here is a charitable remainder trust structure for individuals for taxable income. You can structure your trust the same way as a charitable remainder trust, but it's not for taxable income. It's for passing on any of the estate that remains after being consumed, or any of the estate that was appreciated during the lifetime. You balance your ledger. You say what your estate is. No one else keeps track of it. Whatever remains goes in your living will. Shouldn't be anything outside of that. There shouldn't be any public debts. Owe no man anything but to love one another, for to love one another is to fulfill the law. By a probate case, they are stating that you violated the law somewhere. They are set up with donation by the trustor, also known as the grantor and or the benefactor. Remember the term benefactor versus beneficiary when you look that up. It says benefactor is the one that gives to the beneficiary. Again, the individual's name and number identify the record. I'm the one that gave the data elements to that record. Therefore, I am the benefactor that gave the data elements to the record, which is the beneficiary. If they wish to use it to their benefit, they have to give me equal consideration. I'm going to one-up them, and I'm going to double unto them. We're going to play with the Lord's money now. I'm going to call you and raise you.
So we're data controller of a surety company that has enormous value.
Correct. We have the ability to double the value. So when you run across a fidelity company that's got a $73 million surety bond against a local municipality, and you can make a $2 million claim per incident per person, you can eat up that $73 million and probably go another $73 million. So you offer up under your own indemnification bond against them to have them do their own little investigation, and that's for $146 million. That way they go bankrupt if they have to pay you out. They would only be able to pay out $73 million and still owe you $73 million. They better investigate. They better do their job. They can lose their entire life. Well, not life. Shouldn't say that. Many people would take their life over something like that. But they could lose their entire company. A lot of employees could go out of business and everything. They don't want that. That provides a partial tax deduction. Again, that's for taxable income. We're not doing it for investment purposes to have a taxable income for appreciation. We're doing it for consumption by the beneficiary through possession and use, where it will depreciate. This is a known fact. The brand new 2000 Chevy C.O.W.A.R.D.S, by the time it reaches 2024, is known as a antique or a classic. One of the two. I think maybe it's 25 is antique, 20 is classic. But either way, that's just an old farm truck. They tend not to increase in a whole lot of value unless you modify them, this and that, or other than that, it's just a sentimental value to a beneficiary like a grandson. They then operate by dispensing income to either the trustor or one or more named non-charitable beneficiaries for a specified period of time, after which they donate the remainder of the trust to one or more designated charitable beneficiaries. So you got a living will. That living will has a power of attorney for this guy named Keith Little to take care of all your transactions, and he's gonna get paid $1,500, $2,000 a month for the minor paperwork. Anything that comes above that minor paperwork, he's going to have to do extra paperwork, and that trust, to being a revocable trust, can make changes and put out a legal schedule, a fee schedule for legal fees for having to draw up any extra documentation or any kind of private viewings for having to be compelled to do business with anybody.
There's an IRS document for that.
Absolutely. They have a document for everything. It's a matter, like I said, being preemptive in this stuff so that you know how to contract and be able to place that equal consideration, equal benefit. And the best way to do that, folks, is to find faults. In that fault, if they can't give consideration to correct it, they're hung unconscionable contract. And we'll talk about more on that as time goes by. And that's why I say, once you find errors and become conscious of it, that act in and of itself proves at least one party was, in fact, at the time of doing such act or deed and executing such documentation, was in fact unconscious of his acts and deeds. did it without the proper intent. So let's look at the next one, which is that unit trust. And this is more of a common law type situation.
There's an IRS 56 for this too.
Correct.
Called Illinois Unit Trust or something or the other.
Right. And you can always do this on the private side, folks. Just like I said, you just have to structure them the same way. So charitable remainder unit trust is a kind of a double trust where you're naming each other as the trustor or trustee of the other trust, and you're donating back and forth each other. Sounds a lot like a common law marriage if you have a full 100 relationship where your partners are each depending upon each other and supporting each other, fully capable of doing these things with equity.
Well, it is a partnership.
Absolutely.
Isn't that what an estate is? Is a partnership?
Yep. And it says a charitable remainder unit trust is an irrevocable tax-exempt trust that generates income and provides a charitable donation to a chosen charity. It can be used to reduce taxable income and avoid capital gains taxes. Now, this is the one we're more interested in the structure, because you now have the ability to have generating income and avoid those capital gain taxes. Again, with a drawback clause. You're not doing it for public benefit. You're doing it for the benefit of your beneficiaries, your inherent heirs, who deserve a cut of your estate first and foremost. So payable upon death, the remainder goes to them. That's it. That's that private placement so that you can gradually increase your assets by adding to your estate and then pass on the entire estate to your beneficiaries. Where if you weren't able to do that and everything went through forfeiture and seizure, well, what happens then? See, that's that public issue. That's the problem. People don't understand this, and they give up their rights, titles, and interest to that property when they do those kinds of things.
You know what's funny is that you can't get paid until you put it to rest, and they can't get paid until you get put to rest.
Right. And that's the circle of life where you have to understand how to use that person in your actions. See, those are still going to be some kind of performance. We can't intercourse with the rest of society without being in person. Though I admit I am not the person, I admit that I have characteristics which are incorporeal in my activities from day to day as I communicate with various different people in various different situations throughout each day. In each one of those, I may have to put on a different hat. Over the course of a lifetime, I may have to change different types of hats. Even the father hat, I might have to change that up as time goes by, getting more children or taking upon a wife that has, marrying a woman that already has children and taking upon stepchildren. These are all variations of different types of hats. When we enter into that public, that's doing the same thing with those officers and persons, and those are all different types of hats. A CRUT is an estate planning tool that can help fund retirement and or provide for other family members while also contributing to a favorite charity. And of course, my favorite charity would be my beneficiaries trust fund. And then within that, you would have various different funds for the new private motor vehicle or to help him establish his own estate by his first piece of land purchase or whatever. So it's a matter of learning the structure of the trust. And again, I'm telling you, And that's your living will. That's when you start naming your beneficiaries, knowing what your assets are, giving them names for crying out loud. The old farm truck, it's Old Brown or something like that. I remember when my mom and dad adopted us, they had two cars, and to introduce us and give us, we actually went there on a couple of visits before they actually adopted us, and spent a couple weekends, here and there at their place. And before they did so, they sent us each, me and my two younger daughters, they adopted us all together, and they sent us each a little booklet with pictures that they had taken about themselves and their lifestyle and the dogs and all this. And they had an old car and a new car. And the old car was a '70 Chevy Impala. It was gray with a black top, and they called it Old Gray. And then, of course, the new one was a new Nova, 1974 Nova, and they called it the New Blue. So people literally, they name their different pieces and pets and this and that, and those are your assets. And I talk to people a lot about this a lot of times when I see these police shooting dogs or family pets of any kind. That's an egregious act, because to me those are the true assets. And it's not just a matter of, some kind of savage beast or being or something that lives inherently in the wild. We inherently are wild ourselves, and we prove it more and more in these modern times as we see all these egregious acts we do to each other and the animals. It's amazing, the narcissism that's written down in history. Anyway, with that, we're done with tonight's stream. Remember, folks, understand the structure of the trust, and like I said, that living will. Teaching a man to fish is inherently the principle. That's that education, charity, and volunteering. And the most inherent people that we do that are our own beneficiary heirs. We do that automatically. When we learn how to do that automatically again, then we can start extending our charity and becoming more philanthropic to the rest of the community. But until then, I think we each need to learn this stuff on our own, privately. Each one teach one again. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, but it doesn't do him much good. So you can't give a man the law and have it do him much good for the day. I can't do the paperwork for you and have you present it in court and have it do much good. You have to be able to support that daily on your own. You have a republic if you can keep it. The only way you can keep that republic is by passing on all that knowledge of what that republic is. And the republic is the knowledge of the law. What do you guys got on the way out?
Well, no will, no way.
Absolutely.
And where there is a will, there's always a way.
Absolutely. I love that. Two opposing dynamic statements, and they are both so true, folks. So true. You have to have the will, folks. And that's what I see a lot is people that don't have the will. They don't do anything about this. They don't even do their research. It was pathetic. I saw that today earlier. I was on a panel and somebody was trying to rebut something I'd said. And it's a very easy query. Just punch it into your search engine and there's all kinds of information that'll come up. But he wanted to go on and on and on about he just didn't believe it. Spend more time going on about how he didn't believe it because he didn't have the will nor the power nor the energy or something to hit the keyboard like 13 times.
And he has a self-defeating mindset.
Yep.
By the words out of his mouth, you will know his fruits. Well, he's not accomplishing anything or getting anywhere because in his own belief system, he's already convinced himself it's not true. So he's already a step behind.
Yep. All right. Well, with that, you guys know me. I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. That's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you and have a good night, folks. We'll see you next time.